Good morning!
I'm your radio teacher,
I am your science buddy.
and I'll give you an exciting lesson that you'll surely enjoy.
Talks Radio. Education must continue.
Learning is a great avenue.
No one will be left behind. With new normal comes new learning.
New method, new way of understanding.
Keep on learning.
Keep on achieving.
There's no way of hindering.
Enriching one's brain.
This is Talks Radio,
your number one source of science education.
Conveying a half an hour of quality scientific teaching on air.
This is
Talks Radio.
Good day to our beloved 9th grade students. This is your school on the air. We are happy to join you in your study through the radio. I am your radio teacher, Teacher Jess. Wow! Please make sure you are in a comfortable spot as you listen to our broadcast.
Okay!
May I ask, have you taken your meal already? A sound body makes up for a sound mind. Oh yeah! Keep yourself at top condition so that you may keep your wits sharp and understand the lesson well. Preceding the lesson for today, we had our discussion on incomplete dominance and codominance. How would you differentiate them with one another? Outstanding! Incomplete dominance happens when the phenotype expressed by the offspring is a blend between the parents' phenotypes. An example of this would be a gray-coated bunny from a black and white-coated parent rabbits. On the other hand, codominance is characteristically the exhibition of certain traits from both parents' genotypes. Wow! An example is the calico cat. You know, the one with the orange, black, and white colors? Its parents could be a tabby gray, a pure black, an orange, or even a white-coated cat. It is impressive to hear that you have retained your studies from our previous episode. We will be back shortly after this break and delve into our lesson on non-Mendelian genetics.
Mare, narinig mo na ba ang tungkol sa online distance learning ng DepEd? Ano ba ito? Ay oo, Mare. Ang online distance learning ay isang pamamaraan kung saan maihahatid ng mga guro ang kaalaman para sa mga anak natin sa tulong ng teknolohiya gaya ng internet, laptop, computer, at cellphone. Ganun ba, Mare? Oo, Mare. Hindi magkakasama at magkakaharap ang mga estudyante at mga guro. Maaaring matuto ang mga bata sa pamamagitan ng online na pagkatuto. Isang mensahe mula sa kagawaran ng edukasyon at ng himpilang ito.
Another recollection on our previous subject matter, you have learned all about Mendel's pattern of inheritance. How does this concept expound on the heritage of particular characteristics from sexually reproducing organisms? Excellent! In this model of inheritance, its parent gives one of the two possible alleles for a trait. For an instance, we have hair color. If your mother was born with natural brown hair, and your father always had black hair, you are bound to have only one color from either of the two. What law of inheritance is illustrated here? That's right. It's the Mendel's law of dominance, which states that in heterozygote, one trait will conceal the presence of another trait for the same characteristic. And in this case, if your father's genes are dominant, you are meant to have black hair. Like what we say in Filipino, matapang ang lahi. However, in the natural world, this is not always the case. You might have probably known that there can be multiple variation of alleles for traits, such as green, blue, brown, gray, black, amber, and even purple eye colors. Bougainvillea plants can obtain a blotch combination of red and orange coloration in the same flower bracts, or even as simple as the blending of characteristics such as black and white-coated guinea pigs can acquire gray-colored pups. Now class, what does this indicate? You've got the point. There are patterns of inheritance wherein traits do not segregate following Mendel's law. We call this the non-Mendelian patterns of inheritance. Are we now ready to begin our lesson? For those who need to use the comfort room, do it now. In a few moments, I will deliver the new lesson. As I mentioned earlier, our lesson today is the continuation of the topics on genetics, specifically the non-Mendelian patterns of inheritance. Please draw out your students' learning material in Grade 9 Science, Module 3. Set your sheets to page 3. Have you settled yet? Alright, let's begin. Have you ever had a relative whose mother had curly hair while their father has straight hair, or vice versa? Do they have either of those traits? Is there a third option? Exactly, my dear students. There are some people who are born with wavy hair, a mix of not too curly and neither too straight hair, a blend between the two characteristics, the development of an intermediate between the two parent traits. As you scan your modules, what do we call this type of inheritance? Good job! We call this as incomplete dominance. Another example shown in the learning material is the display of pink flower offspring from red and white flowered parents. This happens when both alleles are present during the gene expression, resulting in an intermediate phenotype. Take a look at the picture of the snapdragons. How would you illustrate the results of the cross among two succeeding generations? What an astute observation! A cross between the parents' generation with a homozygous red flower plant and a homozygous white flower plant will produce offspring with pink flowers, as shown in the F1 generation. However, a cross between two heterozygotes of F1 of generation will result in an F2 generation with a phenotype of 25% red flowers, 50% pink flowers, and 25% white flowers with a phenotype ratio of 1:2:1. This means that with every one red or white flowered offspring, there are two blended offspring. Have you heard of the lucky cat before? You know, the one with all the possible colors a cat could have. Orange, black, gray, and white, all in one body? You've probably seen them before. Better if you have one as a pet. They are called calico cats. Capital C-A-L-I-C-O. Calico. They are also known as tricolor. Usually, their parents are either a tabby gray and an orange-coated cat. When they cross together, instead of having a dominant recessive allele interaction, all the colors will be exhibited as dominant. As a result, the phenotype of the offspring is a combination of the phenotype of the parents. Take note, no blending of traits occurred. Rather, both traits are fully expressed. Take a look at page 8. What is this pattern of inheritance called? That is correct. We call this as codominance. What does this mean? Read aloud with me, shall we? Codominance is a heterozygote condition wherein both traits are present simultaneously, rather than one fully determining the phenotype. Another example of this situation is the speckled chicken, which is the offspring of a black and white parent chickens. Take note, it is neither black nor white, not even a blend of gray, but rather produce a chicken with both black and white feathers. As you scan more on the module, you shall discover that among the rarest blood types is produced or product of codominance, the blood type AB, with the A allele and B allele acting as dominant against the recessive blood type O. A combination of A with O generally produces a heterozygous B said with B and O. If both blood type O's are paired, of course, you shall obtain a homozygous recessive blood type O. However, with two different dominant alleles present, in this case, A and B parents, an offspring with blood type AB is produced. Do you know that the presence of natural brown hair, red hair or ginger, blonde hair, platinum blonde, and especially black hair among us humans is an expression of multiple alleles? That's right. A single gene that has more than two alleles is called multiple alleles. Another example as shown in page 9, it is the ABO blood group. ABO blood groups in humans as an example of a gene that has multiple alleles is the one that controls the inheritance. There are 4 blood group systems: A, B, AB, and O. Any presence of more than 2 alleles in a characteristic is an instance of multiple alleles.
What are the usual characteristics that you can pinpoint between a male and a female human being? Good job! Males tend to have more body covering, such as chest hair, while women don't. How about another case? Females tend to have generally lighter skin than males. That's correct. What else? Most of the time, more men in comparison to women are bald, while lactation or milk production is common in women, but certainly not in men. Excellent, my dear learners! As you have surmised, these are inherited characteristics determined by sex. This chapter of our lesson explains how and why some traits are generally or even exclusively found on either males or females, and discuss in detail the three kinds of sex-related inheritance, namely sex-linked, sex-limited, and sex-influence. Can you recall what combination of sex chromosomes would develop into a female embryo during fertilization? Outstanding! You still remember, huh? The answer is two X chromosomes, or XX would yield a female embryo. How about a male embryo? What combination of sex chromosomes would get one? Absolutely right. A combination of an X chromosome and a Y chromosome, or XY for short, would generate a male embryo during fertilization. As we all know, these combinations of X and Y chromosomes carry instructions that would determine the way how a male or a female would develop traits such as generally larger muscles, large hair density, strong odors during perspiration in men, while in women generally do not produce facial hair, have wider hips, and production of milk from mammary glands. Although some occasions tend to have traits appear in the opposite sex, these traits can be explained why they are more prevalent in one sex than the other. Let's start with the sex-linked genes. Take your modules to page 11. Sex-linked genes are genes found either on X or Y chromosomes, which are inherited differences among male and a female. Sex-linked traits are determined by an X-linked gene when an X chromosome takes control. Guess what sex carries this? Very well, it's a female. On the other hand, the so-called Y-linked genes are those located on the Y chromosome. Consequently, what sex carries these chromosomes? That's correct. It's a male. Although most of the hereditary traits such as physical characteristics are studied in this topic, genetic and sex-related illnesses are the medical focus in the study of sex-linked traits. An example is the disease that so many European nobles during the early 18th to 19th century. We call this as hemophilia. I repeat, hemophilia is a disease that stops blood clotting and may cause fatal blood loss from otherwise non-fatal wounds on the non-afflicted. Since this phenomenon is cited on the X chromosome, females identified to have affected two X chromosomes cause the disorder. Since two X chromosomes are required for this trait to be expressed, it means that this sickness rarely hits female, while it is more prevalent in males. But why? That's very good. It is because it only takes one X chromosome in males for it to be exhibited as in XY, while females takes two of these infected hemophilia gene X chromosomes. This probability is considerably low due to the heterozygous nature of pairing between parents. Other examples of X-linked trait is color blindness, as these traits will be manifested in females who have two genes of color blindness. Meanwhile, in males, there is only one gene of the disorder needed to express the phenomenon. Meanwhile, Y-linked traits, if present, will always be inherited by sons from their fathers, as the only source of Y chromosomes can be from a male. An example of this is hypertrichosis pini oris, or what we call hairy human ear. The next type of sex-related inheritance is the sex-limited trait. These genes are only expressed in a certain sex. An example, of course, is lactation or milk development. The lactating gene is a dominant gene over the non-lactating recessive gene. In female cattle carrying one dominant gene or two dominant genes, lactation will be shown. Nevertheless, neither male cattle having dominant genes nor in male cattle that have recessive genes will lactate, despite males having mammary glands as well. Can you give me another example of a sex-limited trait? Good job! Although some women can grow a faint mustache or even a very light beard, females cannot naturally grow sideburns or cheek hair. That is a male sex-limited trait. Finally, we have sex-influence traits. Sex-influence traits are autosomal traits that are expressed in both sexes but more frequent in one than in the other sex. One classic example of this is male pattern baldness, which can be expressed in females but more often manifested in males. This can be explained with the genes having two alleles, bald, serve for big letter B, and non-bald, that is small letter b. And these genes are highly influenced by the hormones individually. We know that all humans have testosterone, but males have higher level of testosterone than females do. This shows that although baldness allele or behave like a dominant allele in males, they are recessive in females. Now, let's wrap it up for a short generalization of our lesson. What are the three non-Mendelian patterns of inheritance? That's right! We have incomplete dominance with one keyword for it is blending, as the two dominant traits becoming an intermediate form of the two. Secondly, we have codominance, whereby two or more dominant traits are all completely expressed and no mixing nor blending occurs. Finally, we have multiple alleles, or the presence of more than two alleles to represent a diverse set of phenotype and genotype variations. With the lesson about sex-related inheritance, what are these three basic types? Correct! First, we have sex-linked genes, whereby they are present in males and females but are expressed differently. Another is sex-limited, where a trait can only be expressed in one specific sex. Lastly, we have sex-influence traits, where a certain trait may appear in the opposite sex but only rarely, which is generally more prevalent in the other sex. To determine how much you have learned today, you are tasked to answer Activity 4 on page 16 of your Grade 9 Science Learning Activity Sheets, Module number 3. The instruction is complete the table below to determine the non-Mendelian patterns of inheritance. involved in the formation of the given phenotype of the offspring produced in a cross between a homozygous black fur rabbit and white fur rabbit. Write your answer on a separate sheet of paper.
Are you ready? Let's begin. Number 1. If the genotype of the offspring is a gray fur, what would be its non-Mendelian pattern of inheritance? Explain. Number 2. If the genotype of the offspring is a broken fur or rabbit that have white fur with any color patches or spots, what would be its non-Mendelian pattern of inheritance? Explain. And finally, for number 3, if the genotype of the offspring is chinchilla fur or brownish, bluish, or gray, except on the stomach that has yellowish-white color, what would be its non-Mendelian pattern of inheritance? Explain.
Ito ang bagong simula, bagong normal, bagong umagang parating. Ito ang tamang panahon upang maghanda sa bagong hamong harapin. Hindi magbabago ang hanap ng pusong tumulong at ituloy ang ating misyon. Dahil anuman ang sitwasyon, tuloy ang edukasyon, walang maiiwan, lahat ay aahon. Sama-sama tulong-tulong sa ating pagsulong. Anuman ang sitwasyon, tuloy ang edukasyon, tuloy, tuloy, tuloy.
Are you done? Alright, let's check. For number 1, its pattern of inheritance would be incomplete dominance. If you get that right, mark it with a check. Of course, a cross between a homozygous black fur rabbit and white fur rabbit produced a 100% gray offspring. A blend of color code traits in rabbits were expressed in the gray fur bunny. Moving with the second one, known as broken fur, its pattern of inheritance would be codominance. The reason is the presence of both white and colored spots indicate the two traits of colors manifested in the bunny. Lastly, on the chinchilla, this is most likely a case of multiple alleles for its pattern of inheritance. The presence of hair color not present in the parent rabbit. It is the result of many variations that were present during the genetic crossing over. For your assignment, study pages 22 to 24 for a quick discussion on pedigrees, which we'll surely tackle later on. We are now done with yet another lesson. Thank you very much for your outstanding interaction to our broadcast. Our next lesson will be all about biodiversity and evolution. Make sure to tune in here at STO Isabela is School on the Air every day. On behalf of the pen behind this script, Rasiper de Villa, and the STO Isabela RBI production team, thank you for listening. Till next time, folks. I am your science teacher for today, Teacher Jess, saying, blood or genes may be thicker than water, but it is your choices that define your life hereafter. Have a good day and goodbye. Over and out.
Patuloy ang edukasyon para sa ating henerasyon.
Sa daan ng pagkatuto ay walang may iwan.
Kaya halina sa Radyo Eskwela!